The torches appear first, dozens of them, floating through the dark jungle at midnight. Then the drums, then the chanting, deep and rhythmic, shaking the ground beneath your feet. And if you're standing on the old trails of Oahu when they pass, if you look directly at them, you die. Not metaphorically, not mysteriously later, right there, on the spot. This isn't a bedtime story. In Hawaii, the Huaka'i Pō, the night marchers, are treated as documented reality, not folklore to be smiled at politely. Reality. And when you look at the history behind this legend, at who was marching, what they were protecting, and what the colonizers did to exploit that fear, the story gets a hell of a lot darker than ghosts. To understand the night marchers, you have to understand what ancient Hawaii actually was. Before 1778, before Captain James Cook sailed into Kealakekua Bay and introduced Hawaii to the concept of Western ownership, the islands operated under a rigid, sophisticated system called the Kapu system. Think of it as a spiritual legal code, enforced not by courts, but by the gods themselves. Certain lands were sacred, certain trails were reserved exclusively for ali'i, royalty, and their warrior escorts. A commoner who wandered onto those trails at the wrong moment didn't go to jail, they were sacrificed. The kapu wasn't a suggestion, it was survival. The night marchers, according to kupuna, Hawaiian elders, are the spirits of those ancient warriors still walking their routes, still enforcing a kapu that the living world decided at some point simply didn't matter anymore. They march along the alaloa, the ancient trail systems that once connected every corner of the islands. They march on sacred nights, the nights of Kane, Ku, Lono, and Kanaloa on the Hawaiian lunar calendar. They carry torches, they carry weapons, and they demand the same respect in death that the living once demanded in fear. Witnesses, and there are hundreds of documented accounts across more than 2 centuries, describe the same things: the smell of sulfur and rotting flowers, a wind that arrives from nowhere, the sound of a pu, a conch shell blown once as warning, and then them, materializing from the tree line, a procession of warriors in full regalia, feathered helmets, war clubs, moving in absolute silence beneath the torchlight. If you hear them coming, the instruction passed down through generations is specific: lie flat, face down, do not move, do not look. If you have Hawaiian blood, you may be spared if an ancestor recognizes you and calls your name. If not, you are in violation of a kapu that never expired. In 1942, a security guard named Samuel Ota was found dead at the base of a cliff on Maui. No explanation. Healthy man, no fall, no marks. In 1987, construction workers drilling foundations for a resort near Waikiki hit a section of ancient trail and reported tools malfunctioning, unexplained illness, one worker hospitalized with no diagnosis. In Kaneohe, a Marine stationed at the base in the 1990s reported waking at 2 a.m. to the sound of drums, walking to the window and seeing the procession cross the parade ground, and then being unable to move, unable to speak until it passed. He filed an official report. The military didn't know what to do with it. But here's what they don't tell you in the tourism brochures. Here's where the night marchers stop being just a ghost story. When the Hawaiian kingdom was overthrown in 1893, illegally, as the U.S. government formally acknowledged in the Apology Resolution of 1993, roughly 1.8 million acres of land were seized, lands that had been held communally, spiritually, ancestrally for centuries, were suddenly repackaged as real estate. By the early 20th century, the Big Five corporations, Castle and Cooke, Alexander and Baldwin, C. Brewer, American Factors, Theo H. Davies, controlled nearly 96% of Hawaii's arable land. They didn't just take the land, they built a mythology around it that served them perfectly. A population that believed certain land was sacred, that disturbing ancient trails would bring lethal supernatural punishment, was a population less likely to organize, less likely to resist land seizures framed as development, less likely to demand compensation for displacement. Fear of the night marchers kept native Hawaiians away from their own ancestral lands, and when developers encountered resistance, they used the legend in reverse, dismissing Hawaiian concerns as superstition, as primitive belief unworthy of legal protection. You can't fight a land seizure in court if your evidence is ghosts. Today, those same 1.8 million acres are the most valuable real estate on Earth. The average home price in Honolulu crossed $1.1 million in 2023. The beachfront land at Waikiki, land that was sacred, land where night marchers have been reported for 200 years, generates billions annually in hotel revenue. The trail systems the warriors walk, many are buried under Interstate H1, under resort foundations, under golf courses charging $400 a round to mainlanders who've never heard the word Kapu. And here's the thing that makes it worse. In 1978, Hawaii enshrined the protection of Hawaiian culture and land rights into its state constitution. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs was created. Billions in land revenue were legally mandated to benefit native Hawaiians. Most of it never arrived. Decades of litigation, mismanagement, and political interference meant that while the legal framework existed on paper, the actual transfer of wealth and land was systematically delayed, diluted, and denied. The same playbook, different century, different paperwork. The night marchers are still being reported. In 2019, residents in a new housing development in Kapoloi on Oahu reported nightly disturbances, drums, lights moving through the property. A cultural survey revealed the development had been built directly over an ancient alaloa, a royal trail. The developer knew. The environmental impact assessment flagged it. They built anyway, because the financial penalty for delay was calculated at $2.3 million per month. The trail was worth less than the timeline. The uncomfortable truth is, the night marchers don't need to be real to be terrifying. The real horror isn't the warriors in the dark, it's the system that seized their land, used their sacred beliefs as a tool of control, buried their trails under asphalt, and then sold the view for $1,000 a night. Every reported encounter with the Huaka'i Pō is happening on land that was taken. Every sacred trail that triggers an account is a trail that someone decided was worth more as a road than as a memory. The warriors are still marching because the kapu was never lifted. It was just overruled by a deed of sale. So here's what I want you to sit with. When a culture's sacred boundaries are dismissed as superstition, who profits? When ancestral land is repackaged as investment property, who loses? And right now, today, what beliefs, what communities, what histories are being labeled as primitive so that someone else can build on top of them? If this kind of history, the kind they don't teach, the kind that's still happening, is what you're here for, you know what to do. The next one is already waiting.